This is our second pass along this cliff looking for our stranded hiker. I didn't have record running the first time. Now we're looking down in the water since we didn't find her, really hoping we don't find her down there. But this time she was facing us and we could see her hands and face up there. You can see it right there in the cliff. With her dark clothing, we just didn't see her the first time. This is her boyfriend. He actually climbed all the way over the top of that cliff trying to get to her from this other side. But there's just tide's in too far and he can't get over there. I don't think he'd be able to climb up from that side anyway. That base is pretty steep and rugged there. So here's a view of the top. There were some hikers up there. There's trails up on top there. They weren't aware of her and she wasn't aware of them. Here I am just going back to change batteries. I'd been out there quite a while. The first responders had just shown up and my daughter made them aware that I had visual of her on the drone. They were very interested in that, and the incident commander was actually over my shoulder the whole time, kind of calling the shots based on what we were seeing on the drone. He was directing me around quite a bit up on top here looking for some route that they could hopefully get to her. This is really thick, heavy brush, and it's steep along that side. So their plan was to rappel down and connect to her and pull her up. I left a lot of the video out here where we were looking for a path for these guys. Here the guys are showing up, the rescue teams. There were 3 trucks initially. I think at the end there were 10. They had a lot of resources on this project. They're rigging up a block and tackle system with a 5-to-1 ratio, and then the guys will use the block and tackle section up near the trees to pull them. So every time they pull, and use up their 20 or so feet, they have to stop and re-rig it. So it's quite a long process. Here the rescuers are trying to find a route to her. The incident commander's talking to him on the radio and directing him around based on what he's seeing on my drone monitor. He's telling him that the drone is pretty much directly over the girl and that's the direction they need to go. They figured out this is where they need to go down. They want to be in a spot where they're not directly over her in case they kick rocks and debris loose as they're rappelling down the hillside. Along the base of this cliff, there's almost like a road that comes in from the right side there, and it's all exposed at low tide, and it slopes up gradually more toward the left end of the cliff. And there's some really nice tide pools and stuff there to explore around in and whatnot. And so how she ended up there was she and her boyfriend had walked up the road, and they were evidently exploring around up there and didn't notice the tide had come back in. So the waves were smashing on the rocks there, and he was afraid to have her try to brave that and go back. So he did, fully dressed. He was like in water up to his waist, and it was a pretty precarious deal because the waves were hitting the rocks pretty hard. And he made it over there and had her stay behind, figuring that he'd figure out a way to get her out of there. But as the tide continued to come up, the situation just got worse and worse. And so the poor girl's family were up in the parking lot. My daughter figured out who they were, saw that they were pretty hysterical. So she had them come over and had me fly down where they could see the girl really well and showed them that she was safe. And that made them feel a lot better. So here they're just clearing a trail. They've got a chainsaw, and they're just trying to clear a path, kind of a straight line for their lines to go over that hillside. I imagine the girl's hearing the chainsaw now. That's probably encouraging for her. They could only cut the path so far, though, because it got steep there. Too steep for the guy with the chainsaw. The climber's all rigged up now. He's got his helmet on and his line's hooked up. And he'll bring an extra line and helmet down to her. They'll each have their own individual lines going back up. So even going down here, it's pretty rough going in all that brush. When we headed out that morning, I almost left my drone at the room. The weather was pretty crappy and I didn't figure I'd be able to get any good pictures or video, but my daughter convinced me to bring it, and it worked out pretty well. The way I happened to even get involved in this was my wife saw the guy come up out of the surf onto the beach, and he was pretty upset and told her what was going on with his girlfriend and how she got stranded out there. So I got the idea to run up to the parking lot and grab my drone and fly it out and see if she was okay or if there's any way we could help. At this point, we're still about an hour and a half from high tide. The tide's still coming in. There were some waves splashing up into that crevice, but even at high tide, I don't think she'd really be in much danger of waves splashing in there hard enough to wash her away or anything. She's probably either glad to see him or really embarrassed. At this point, my battery in the drone's getting pretty low, so I head back to change out the battery before they start going back up while he's connecting her up. Got to be pretty careful landing with all these people around. My daughter was running interference for me a little bit. So here I'm flying back out over the other side of the cliff with the new battery. He's got her all rigged up now, ready to go. Waves are kind of nipping at their heels there. These close-in shots like this, the drone's not near that close. I'm zooming in post-production when I edit the video. I could only get in so close and so low on this side before I lose my video signal to the monitor. So the guys that are pulling them up are pulling they have a 5-to-1 ratio. So for every 5 feet they pull, these guys only go a foot. And I think they had about 20 or 25 feet of it rigged. So basically, every time they pull these guys up 4 or 5 feet, they have to stop, tie them off, and then stretch the block and tackle system back out to take another bite on it and pull them up another 5 feet or so. So this took quite a while. I cut a lot of the video out here. This section took a long time. I cut a lot of this out. They're having a rough go. This poor girl was probably tired at the end and probably scraped up. Even the experienced guy was having a tough time. The problem was that the guys that are pulling them can't see them, so they can't see what's going on. All they know is what they're hearing on the radio. So if they don't have their footing or they're trying to get squared away and the guys start pulling, it kind of messes them up. When the whole thing was over, they had a big debrief in the parking lot. I was listening in, and that was one of the things they talked about when they were discussing what they'd maybe do different next time or what they could learn from this. And one of the things was that to be aware of or have some communication as far as what's going on the other end of the rope so they're not pulling at the wrong time. This video quality might not be the best on a bigger screen. I cropped in quite a ways when I was editing here. This whole incident was the day after Thanksgiving. This couple was from out of town. They weren't real familiar with tides or anything. This is around on the what would be the right side from what we were looking at before. Just kind of looking in from the back view here. The guys picking up all their gear, wrapping up their lines and everything. It's a pretty big rescue response. The guy said if the drone hadn't been there, they'd have had to bring a helicopter in to see exactly where she was. They had no other way of knowing. So that worked out pretty well. It's pretty cool. A few more rescue rigs up there.